evening's webinar. And so you'll see that pop up on your screen. That recording will then be hosted on our website. So if what we learn about today is something you're really interested in and you want to go back and listen, or you want to share it with any friends or family who might be interested in transitions care, you'll always be able to access that recording on our website. So again, my name is Laurel Ramirez. I'm the school director here at Academia Cotopaxi. It's a wonderful honor to be leading this wonderful school here in Quito, Ecuador. I have 24 years of educational leadership experience. I've been at head of school for quite a long time now, across 3 different continents, which is always very interesting. And I'm currently a student, lifelong learner, getting my doctorate in educational innovation and education reform with a minor in educational leadership and policy studies. So I'm a complete nerd, love to learn, love to think about the way that schools run. And it's an amazing honor this evening to welcome Tania Espinosa de Duran Bayen, who we are so fortunate here at Academia Cotopaxi to have as our school psychologist and our head of the counseling department. Tania leads a team of counselors across our school who work with kiddos all the way from age 1 all the way through grade 12. So we're very, very grateful for all of Tania's expertise. I know that I'm going to learn a lot from Tania this evening. She's going to do the majority of the heavy lifting on our content this evening. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you so much, Tania, for all of that. We plan to take you through so much information this evening. And a lot of the slides are going to have a lot of information on them. Please don't worry about furiously jotting down notes or worrying about kind of retaining that information. As we finish the webinar today, you will receive an email thanking you for attending, and that will have a PDF copy of today's slides. So all of the information that you see, you'll get that in a PDF afterwards. So don't worry about taking notes. And at any time that you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. We're always curious for this to be a little bit more of a conversation than a presentation. So as questions occur to you, go ahead and stick those in the chat. As you can see from our agenda, we're going to run through just some basics of transitions care. So really rooting children and that priority for flourishing anywhere in the world. Then we're going to talk a little bit about our approach to grounding our students in place. We're going to be very detailed about talking to you about what we do for arrivers, what we do for stayers, and what we do for leavers. And then you can see there that we're setting aside some time for questions and answers. So as you have questions, jot them down for yourselves, throw those into the chat. We'll get to those at the end. All right, and without further ado, we're going to jump in. I want to first really recommend a resource to you. I came upon Safe Passage Across Networks. They go by the acronym SPAN as a resource as a head of school in my last school context in Thailand. It is a wonderful, wonderful resource. You can get both individual memberships to SPAN. You can get school-wide memberships to SPAN. A lot of the content that you'll see this evening is inspired by SPAN because I myself as a school director have been really inspired by them. And I think as we work with students and we really think about transitioning and the way that we can support positive transitions care, especially if this is a topic that's really new to you, SPAN might be a really invaluable resource for you to be able to continue to grow your understanding of the different ways that transitions can impact us all and then how we can support students through those transitions. So I really wanted to make sure that I shared that recommendation with you all. And please know that a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening is inspired by the work that the great team at SPAN has been doing for years. All right, so if you've joined us over the series of our different webinars over the course of this year, you may have joined us at our first webinar. If you've missed that webinar, it is on our website. You can search for that and watch that. We talked a lot in the first webinar about rooting children and that importance of children really feeling connected to the place that they're in, the way that then contributes to them flourishing as human beings. And this is a really interesting concept for all of us to think about. Many of you put in the chat at the beginning of our webinar that you were parents, right? That you have kiddos at lots of different ages and stages. No matter the age or stage, goodness isn't important, and research really backs this up, that children feel connected to wherever they are. For children who grow up and stay in the same place always, that can be a bit more obvious and a bit more simple to achieve. They might be surrounded by an ethnocultural heritage that's similar to theirs all of their lives. And that rooting feels very, very easy and very automatic. For many of us, myself included, my own children, many of you on the call, I know Francisco for sure is dealing with this with his kiddos. We move around the world. We're globally mobile, right? And maybe our children will live in 3, 4, 5 different countries over the course of their childhood. For children like that who are experiencing such frequent transitions, really being intentional about the way that they connect in the places that they are, even if that's a temporal amount of time, is incredibly important. As family members and as teachers and counselors and educators working with children, emphasizing and really nurturing whatever that ethnocultural heritage is for our children. So, for example, in my case, my children are half Mexican, half American, really reinforcing what it means to be American, what it means to be Mexican. That helps them to know themselves, right? In the case of my children, they're from those two countries, but they've grown up in Costa Rica, in Thailand, in Ecuador. They don't necessarily feel super American sometimes. They don't necessarily feel super Mexican, right? And so really reinforcing that ethnocultural heritage is really, really important for children. And then no matter where you are and in those transitions that you might make through life, really rooting in ritual and tradition. And Tanya and I are going to talk a lot today about the ways that we root ritual and tradition into our school context. So when we get these kiddos who are moving all over the world, how do they connect to the place that they're in? What are the traditions that they follow that can accompany them from location to location? And how can they hold on to themselves as they make these many transitions in their lives? Very importantly, we're also going to talk about just children in general and what they need, right? That's the first thing that Tanya is going to really review with you. What do we know about the way that children learn and grow? And then we'll spend a lot of time, for those of you who are Ecuadorian or maybe joining us from a country that you've lived in your whole lives and that you continue to live in, what do we do with those kiddos who are called stayers, right? Where they themselves are not making these transitions, but they are experiencing transition. Friends come, friends go, connections are made, connections are then distanced, right? And how do we support those stairs? So it's going to be an amazing evening. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to learning from Tanya. It's really, really important to ground ourselves in those frameworks that really apply to all children, but that especially impact who are called third culture kids. So these kiddos like my own, who were born in the United States, lived between the US and Mexico, but have spent the majority of their childhood outside of their passport country. That's the definition of a third culture kid. So some of you on the call this evening might be third culture kids yourselves, right? You have spent the majority of your childhood outside of your passport country. These are special kiddos and they require a special lens that we kind of see them through and special supports. So Tanya is going to start to walk you through a bit all of those different theoretical frameworks that really ground us. So welcome, Tanya, and please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Laurel. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Laurel, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I have learned a lot from you and from Span, so I think it's the other way around. Anyway, when we talk about transitions, we need to talk about John Barry and his work on acculturation styles, where he talks about integration, assimilation, separation, and marginalization. So assimilation is when the student ignores where he comes from and abandons his home culture to make sure that he adapts to the new culture. Separation is when they feel so strongly identified with their home culture that they avoid anything to do with the host culture. Marginalization is when they feel disconnected from both home and the host culture. And what we really want is to have integration, which is a healthy balance. That's accepting your own culture, knowing where you come from, knowing your roots, and yet embracing this new possibility. And to do that, as a school, it is really important that you value multilingualism, cultural identity, belonging. And that is the transition stage that we aim to support at Academia Cotopaxi. Yeah. It is really important too that I share with you, and let me show you, we have, as part of our school, that you belong. And we say you belong because it is really important. If kids don't feel a sense of belonging, they don't learn. So belonging and feeling part of the space and the 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 school is really, really important. David Pollock and Ruth Bandrecht wrote the first groundbreaking book in TCKs, and it was called Growing Up Among Worlds. And what they said is that many TCK have experienced more loss in their developmental years than most adults experience in a lifetime. So, with that having in our hearts, we need to know that when we work with these kids, we have to do it knowing where they come from, knowing what they need. So, for this reason, what we did is we included different theories. For example, we have Erickson, and I'm not going to bore you and go over it. We have Maslow, we have Bowlby and Aniston, Baumeister and Larry, and all of these talk about what it is that the kid needs and what can the school do. So we want you to have this opportunity to look when you get the recording and look at what it is that you need to do as a school.
And then, as Tanya says, I think as educators, what we really endeavor for here at Academia Cotopaxi is really grounding ourselves in those theoretical frameworks, right? If we look back on these amazing experts and we understand what they know about the way that children develop, the way that they create their and develop their identity, the way that they connect with others, it can really guide then the actions that we take. And you're going to hear Tanya and I say this a lot. We're not going to read through this list, but again, you'll get this as a PDF after our presentation today. But for us, the most important starting point, as we really try and endeavor to become a school that is known for and excels in its transition care, is really thinking about that grounding of our students, right? So what is that whole school approach that we can take, no matter if a student is a student who is born and raised here, for in our case, Quito, Ecuador, has grown up here their whole lives, may always live here, right? Maybe their life will always be in Quito, or whether they're students who come and go, as a US State Department assisted school, we get lots and lots of kiddos coming in as embassy dependents, US State Department dependents, and they're here for a few years, and then they move on to another few years somewhere else in the world, and that is their life, right? And there's lots and lots of transition and change there. So we think a lot about the ways in which we structure our school. We're working right now on an exciting project that we talk about every day because we're so excited by it. Because there's interesting opportunities that we have as international schools to have a lot of kind of freedom and to think about the way that we structure things in our school environment. For us, something that we've been thinking a lot about is our school calendar. And really just thinking about those opportunities that we have. I know Francisco, who's on the call, is one of our parents, a former leader of our Parent-Teacher Association. The way that we welcome families into our school, right? The way that we set up the beginnings and the endings of the year to say a really proper and wonderful hello, and to set time aside for really beautiful goodbyes, right? That's important no matter what kind of student you are, no matter what kind of adult you are. Really fostering those positive relationships is incredibly important. So we're building next year's school calendar already. And one of the things that we're thinking a lot about is connected to the things that you see listed on your screen right now, right? We're thinking a lot about the process of how we do things. How do we welcome students initially into the school? What do those first days look like? What kind of activities and experiences do we want children to have so that they build and foster these really deep connections with one another, so that they know each other, so that when they're then in class together and learning experiences all year long together, there's a relationship there first, right? And they feel safe and they feel known and they feel loved. And then they learn and they grow together in a really beautiful way. Those relationships are really, really key. And so we're constantly kind of thinking about what are the ways in which our school calendar can foster and develop and nurture really powerful relationships for our students, and not only for our students with each other, but for the adults in our school with our students, for the adults in our school with one another. Oftentimes that partnership between parents and teachers and students is such a strong interconnected partnership, but only if we nurture it, right? Only if we provide that time for everyone to get to know one another and to share meaningful experiences together. And then we're constantly, and this is a newer thing for Academia Cotopaxi, so we are in the journey alongside everyone else, right? We're constantly kind of wearing that lens of transitions care. So how can we think about new student orientation from a transitions perspective? If I'm a brand new student, I'm a brand new family, how can we make that experience the smoothest, most positive experience possible, where families and students would just feel like, oh my goodness, I transitioned into that school as if I'd been there my entire life, right? It was so smooth, it was so wonderful that I felt no friction, no confusion, no discomfort, right? I always felt good. And just continuing to think in every way through every single process that we have and structure that we have as a school in that sense of relationship and belonging and really, really nurturing our kiddos. So there's so many exciting ways you can do that. We're going to continue to share more examples, but just wanted to share that with you all right now, that right now, school calendar, that's our main focus of kind of how can we make some interesting decisions related to the school calendar that really supports positive transitions care.
And I think that it's important to say that a lot of the work that we do, it's being revised because we need to do even a better job. So in a school, not only kids learn, all of us learn and we improve, because if not, we'll be stagnated. So let me just run a little bit share with you what it is that we do, and it's going to be even better next year. But right now, in our early years program, we have a wonderful opportunity where our children meet their teachers for the first time when they go to their homes with the teacher assistant, with the instructional assistant, and they meet their kids. And we're talking about our early years program, hosts kids 12 months old all the way to pre-kinder. So some might be 5 years old. So a way to approach adaptation is to meet the parents, because obviously, as parents of little kids, you're full of hesitation and full of stress, because who am I going to give? Who am I going to share my wonderful kid with? So research, again, has found that meeting the child in their environment helps this connection. So the teachers and the instructional assistants go, and the child helps them see their playground, their rooms. They share their favorite snack, which is funny because you can imagine the teacher cannot say no. So by the end of those 2 weeks, I think they all feel completely full, because everybody shares amazing things and, pizzas or things that are important for the kids. So in addition, in the earlier years, for our students that are from 12 months to 2 years old, they have a full week transition. So they come in for a little bit with their caretaker, and they look at the classroom. So they familiarize with their surroundings, with their teachers, with the trusted adult next to them. So for parents that work, that might be their nanny, that could be any trusted adult. And then for pre-kinder, which is a multi-age program, is for 3-year-olds, and some turn 5 there. They also get the home visit, but then they have one day where before they start school, they come in and it's a drop in and play. They look at the classroom, they visit, they meet each other, they see each other. So again, we're very happy with our early years program transition. Then in elementary, middle school, and high school, we have a new family orientation, which Laurel is helping us work on it to make it even better. But while we have the new family orientation in elementary, kids from K to 5th grade have activities with the counselors. The ambassadors guide our students, And we are going to have ambassadors beginning in fourth grade. So they will be part of our welcoming of kids. Our class placement is done thinking about, where would this kid fit best? The counselors have luncheons with the kids. And then something that is very helpful is that as counselors, we meet regularly, not only with the kids' classroom teacher, but with their special teachers, so that we can see how is that student doing. And we do this for all of our students. So literally, I had a student support meeting today, where I open my computer and we go with, okay, student A, student B, student C, and we talk about all the kids and find out, not only academically again, but how are they doing? How's their transition? So again, it's great. In middle school, the kids have buddies for the first few days. Also, ambassadors play an amazing role there. And we do have these check-ins to see how they are doing. In high school, we have ambassadors again. This year, they were wearing a red hood, and you can see them for the first 2 weeks of school, wearing them proudly, because you have to apply to be an ambassador, and it's a big deal. And then the kids will know, oh, the ones that have the red hoodies are the ones that are there to help me. Throughout the school year, but especially during the first month, we are meeting consistently, and counselors and teachers are all hands on deck. So we are going into the playgrounds, we're observing, we're looking at lunch. So that's a little bit of what we do for our arrivers.
And I love the focus that you take, Tanya, because listening to you, what I'm hearing you say is that you're considering arrivers as much any new student, right? So even a little one who might be coming into school for the first time, which is like the epitome of an arriver, right?
Yes.
Never been to school before. So it's
Yes.
like the biggest arrival they'll ever do. And so that could be a kiddo in any country and maybe in their own country, right? But they're arriving for that first time. I'm also hearing you talk a lot about those really important transitions, right? So maybe I'm arriving from elementary school into middle school, and this might be a school I was already at, but there's transitions to consider there. And then, of course, you're also speaking to that experience of just a brand new student, right, who might be coming in at any age or stage into a brand new school, brand new context. And so it's really interesting. And I really encourage those of you on the call today to really continue to think about transitions in the way that Tanya's encouraging you, right? That really we're all experiencing transitions all the time, right? In so many different ways. And so sometimes we can kind of stereotypically believe, oh, surely an arriver means like literally they're not, in our case, Ecuadorian, right? And they're arriving from somewhere else. And this is such a cultural change. But there's lots of ways that you can arrive into a new context and into a new experience. And maybe there's familiarity, but there's also newness to that as well. And so that's interesting.
And
Had
I
a
also
really beautiful.
think that changing, for example, from one school to another, every school is a system. So you are new, you are coming new.
Yeah.
And we need to be cognizant of the fact that while kids are going through transition, parents are going through transitions. Many of these kiddos are in hotels for the first month. So yes, teachers do visit hotels because that's important, right? To meet the kid where the kid is at.
It's home, even for just a few days or a few
Yeah.
weeks, right? Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of this connects in a really interesting way to what we call in transitions care stayers. And I had a really beautiful private chat come into me as we were just talking about that notion of really encouraging for kiddos who are comfortable, right? Maybe they're not arriving. This is a place they've been before, they've been in school before, they've been in this particular context before, and really inculcating in them that open-mindedness and that curiosity of those new peers coming in so that they're really welcoming, right? Those stayer behaviors are incredibly important. And sometimes in schools, what we do in relationship to stayers is not attend to them, honestly, in the ways that we maybe ideally would. Some of the things that can happen as a stayer. So a stayer in the definition of transitions care is exactly what it sounds like. It's a person who stays. So it's a person, maybe in our context, who's Ecuadorian. They've always lived in Quito. Maybe they've always gone to Academia Cotopaxi. We have many, many of these students who come to us as babies, as 1-year-olds, and they stay with us the entire time and they graduate in 12th grade. That's the epitome of a stayer, right? They're here that entire time. They're having a consistent experience. They develop relationships that are very long-term relationships with other stayers, right? And those relationships can be incredibly strong and incredibly powerful and really beautiful relationships. They also experience a lot of coming and going of other members of the community. And what can happen and what research says about stayers is that if we don't attend to stayers, if we don't pay attention to the ways in which we support and nurture our stayers, they actually run incredible risk of growing a bit apathetic. So, wanting to kind of put up a bit of a wall on relationships with those who might be arriving because they also know that they will leave, right? And so it can feel just a little bit emotionally exhausting to welcome in a friend who in a couple of years I'm going to say goodbye to. In the same way that I would say that arrivers and leavers can also develop apathy, the research shows that kind of every group runs this risk, right? To give a very concrete example, last year we had moved from Thailand to the United States for just 1 year, and we knew from the moment that we did that we would only be in the US for 1 year. That was a part of the plan. And my 18-year-old said to me a couple months in, I don't have any intention to make any friends. What would be the point? We're going to leave. And so that is that exact apathy that we're speaking of, right? And it's very normal, right? I, of course, said to him, you're being crazy. You have to make friends. You're not going to spend an entire year avoiding friendships just because you're going to leave in a year. But we have to know that can be a thing, right? That can be a thing for arrivers and leavers. That can be a thing that stayers experience. So especially focusing on stayers for us here at Academia Cotopaxi, this is a new focus and a new intention, and we're trying to be very, very intentional about the way that we support our stayers. So there's lots of ways, and we've talked about this before, that we might think about stayers as just your everyday student, right? So those normal transitions where maybe I'm moving from early years programming, which for us is through pre-K, maybe I'm moving into kindergarten. This is a big, big step, or I'm in 5th grade and I'm going to move into middle school. We do these things called step-up days to be able to support students in transitioning to what we call different kind of divisions of our school, right? Where maybe I have a different principal than I've had in the past, maybe different teachers that I'm interacting with. Stayers experience that just like new students do. But for them, it might be even more difficult because, for example, if I'm in elementary school here, all the way from kindergarten through 5th grade, I've had the potentially same principal that entire time. Maybe I have seen and known the same teachers that time. And then I'm moving on to middle school. Goodness, new secondary principal, new teachers, new schedules, new routines. Those are transitions that we want to support. So we try and provide a lot of that support for our stayers in that way, in ways that Tanya kind of talked about with arrivers as well, right? So guidance courses, parent meetings, really kind of planning for and considering those transitions so that we're really deeply thinking through how we can support them moving from something that they've known well into a new context. Because what we hope for with our stayers, especially being in an international school with this globally mobile population that's coming and going, is that our stayers become, despite the fact that they are by definition staying, that they become transitions experts, right? That they, through proxy and through relationship, learn how to manage transitions in the same way that that kiddo who's coming and going because they're globally mobile is learning to manage transitions, if that makes sense. So they understand change. They understand how to not be like my son, but develop relationships, have good friendships, value those, even if I know I'm going to say goodbye, right? Because in that moment, as the private chat message came into me, said, I'm curious. I want to know about this person, right? Somebody new. We just had a new student arrive with Belgian heritage. I'm so curious about that, right? What can I learn about Belgium? What are is this a French speaking Belgian? Is this a Dutch speaking Belgian? Like very interesting, right? We want our stayers to continually have that curiosity and to feel like they're enriched by these comers and these goers that we have at the school, and that they continually kind of thrive on that curiosity, right? They're excited for new students to come and they feel motivated by change. What I think is an incredible benefit for stayers as we take them through, these structures that you see on the screen, like Cougar Camp, which Cougar Camp is like, welcome to middle school, right? You have a bajillion different teachers. You're moving from classroom to classroom. How can you be successful in middle school? When we walk students through and we scaffold the way that something new is happening, if you think about it for a stayer, we're setting them up for an eventual potential transition. Perhaps they graduate from 12th grade and for the first times in their lives, they're a leaver, right? They're leaving their home country. Maybe they're going and they're studying in Canada or they're studying in the US. This is going to be their first kind of lived transition. We hope that they take all of that knowledge that they have from those experiences with peers transitioning to say, I also have transition skills, right? I also am able to be very resilient and to go forward into an unknown context and do that well because I've been surrounded by difference and people who have unknown context right here, and I'm ready for it myself. So that's always our goal. So as you can see on the screen, we have lots of different activities that we take them through, constant transitions focus. And what we're constantly trying to look out for now more than ever is any of those signs of apathy that I talked about, right? So are we noticing any clickiness in our stayers? Are we noticing that despite, really honestly, when we all do this, when we're apathetic, we're not doing it intentionally, right? It's kind of like an emotional protection measure. But am I kind of turning myself off to social friendships or relationships because I just feel a bit tired by the need to say goodbye, and I don't want to say goodbye, right? So we're looking out for those apathetic tendencies, directly working with students because we want people to feel rooted, to feel that they belong, and to understand the benefits of those connections, of those peers who might come and go. But then, my goodness, I have the potential of having friends from all over the world. And again, using my 18-year-old as an example, after living in Thailand and having these friends from all over the world, he has best friends in Bangladesh, in China. He went and visited them last summer on his own, right? I mean, what an amazing experience to be a person from the US, from Mexico in his case, but to have best friends in Bangladesh, to have best friends in China. I think for those of us who are so drawn to international contexts and experiences, this is exactly what we're hoping for our children, right? So for stayers, that international environment is a wonderful environment as well that nurtures in that really beautiful way that globally mobile children are nurtured by their many different experiences. It nurtures stayers as well. But again, as school leaders, as teachers, as counselors, as parents, we have to be paying attention to our stayers and we have to be ensuring that their emotional development is happening in the optimal ways possible. All right, so Tanya's going to talk to you a little bit about that other end, right? So the leavers.
And I also think that it's important just to mention that we are going to, after looking at, hearing Laurel talk about SPAN and all the information she has, our approach is going to be more specific towards the stayers as well. Because I think that for many years, we have done a pretty good job at leavers, which is what I'm going to talk about. We have opened our arms and hearts to all of the arrivers, but we have not paid attention as much to the stayers because we took it for granted. They are here, and because they are here, well, they are with us. So they just have to say hello and goodbye. And we took it for granted that we need to make sure that those kids and the teachers and the faculty have training on what it means to be open-minded and what are the advantages of being on an international school. So having friends around the world is wonderful. Also learning from each other. And we are also going to put more specific support for the stayers so that instead of wanting to guard their hearts and say, oh, I don't want to become friends with this kid because they are going to leave, they can enjoy the moment and say, you know what? That person can be my best friend because we can now be connected through all these different platforms and perhaps we can see each other during the summer. So that's It's coming, it's working, we're working on that. And we're going to do a lot of work with the ambassadors and the kids staying. So I'm very, very excited about everything that's coming. And after so many years, it's wonderful to be super excited about something completely new. So about our leavers, every child in our school has a transition support program to say goodbye. We make sure that if the child wants to, they are the ones that tell their classmates that they're leaving when they are ready, because some kids don't want to say it yet, and we need to respect that process. The kids get individual support with the counselor. They also get a group goodbye, because it's important that we normalize the fact that they are leaving and they're not the only ones. So we have a big map and we get to see, where am I going? And some of the kids in these meetings find out that they're going perhaps to the same country. So that is wonderful. Yeah. We get through the admissions office, they help us making sure that the parents get connected sometimes with the new school, that all the documentation that the parents need, that the kids need, whereas it's transcripts, report cards, all of that is handled by our admissions office, and they do a magnificent work with that, and with all of the transitions. Then when all of the parents get an exit interview, because it's with that exit interview that we make sure that we improve. That's when, and everything that the parents tell us and the kids tell us, because they also help us become even better. It's important that for most cases, parents say that they have had a wonderful experience, but those that say, well, we would have liked a little bit more TLC, or a little bit more individual time with the counselor, or more meetings, we hear you, and we make sure that we work on that. Preparation for graduation, kids have individual counseling support. We have, and one of the luxuries that this school has is we have one college counselor for our graduating class. So if we think about that, in many huge schools, they might have one or two counselors. We have a dedicated college career counselor that starts working with these kids in 9th grade to do vocational tests, career readiness, that works together with the social emotional counselor, but they are there to help these kids get where they want to get. We have the amount of scholarships that we get are impressive. The universities that our kids go to are great. But what we are also knowingly doing is that we have to prepare our seniors for the biggest transition. They are going to leave home, they're going to leave mom and dad, and they might go to a different country, they might go to a completely different state. So they need to be the ones. And remember that they were, for the most part, the stayers, right? So with this in mind, is that our stayers also need to be ready to experience these transitions, because they will have them. They will experience them when they are 17 or 11 years old.
And it's so tricky, those transitions, right? Because as a parent of a 20-year-old, I would tell you that having raised that child outside of his passport country his whole life, and then he chose to go to his passport country for university, it didn't feel like going home, right? And we didn't literally have a home for him to spend weekends in at college, or to go to in, long vacations. So, sometimes if you send your kiddo out from the country you're in off to another country, it's very challenging in that way. But it's the same thing for these third culture kids, right? They've grown up all over the world. And so they don't necessarily feel that connection to home, or have that kind of extended family at home. So that college step, oh my goodness, no matter the situation where that kiddo's coming from, it can be challenging. that was actually one of the questions that came into me through the private chat. If you have any questions at all, please throw those into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I had a person come into the private chat ask me, are there some grade levels that are more challenging from a transitions perspective? And I mean, I don't know what you think, Tanya, but I do think maybe the high school grades can be quite challenging. You know, as children are trying to build those transcripts, and they move between one context and another, you know, every school is slightly different. Even if you go to, for example, an American international school, there's no guarantee that that American international school in every single country that you go to is going to have exactly the same structure. And so sometimes building into that transcript for graduation can be tricky. Oftentimes children in ninth grade, you know, they'll start to make a bit of a plan and they're thinking about kind of, okay, what's the result that I want coming out of 12th grade? So I always consider that potentially maybe high school is a bit of a tricky time, especially I know we have State Department families that, for example, will have a 3-year placement and keep them, maybe the kiddos come in ninth grade, it's 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And then to transition to a new context into 12th grade, you know, they can usually do a 1-year extension, but those kinds of things can be quite tricky, right? When that transition comes perhaps at an undesired grade level. As I say that, though, I would also tell you that maybe there's no harder moment in life than middle school, no matter if you're a globally mobile kid or a stayer. And so transitioning sometimes in those times when you feel a little bit awkward as a kiddo and you're still working on your social skills, that can be quite tricky. It's also kind of personality dependent, I would say. I don't know if you agree, Tanya, but you know, some of us are just incredibly outgoing and we seem to just adapt very easily to any context, and other kiddos are a little bit more shy, or maybe they're dealing with some learning support or neurodiversity or challenges that might make adaptation a little bit more challenging. And so
I,
it really can be particular to the case.
I do think that middle school is one of the biggest times for all of the kids, challenging times. But you can imagine in elementary school, you have one classroom teacher, and you move to Spanish, which is another classroom teacher. You have art, you have other things. But in middle school, and that's why we have our Cougar class, the kids have to learn how to navigate schedule that is changing and go to different classes for all of the classes. So I think that's the most difficult time, but it also depends on the personality, because for some kids, having the opportunity to have many, many classes and many teachers is super excited and they are ready. They have one of the things that we do is we print the schedule for the kids too, and we have them posted all over. It's like, wow, so now I get to go here. And they go to the annex for like their Cougar class, for example, or their different classes. And they're like, wow, you know, they feel so big. But I do think that that's hard. I think that the hardest transition for parents after being in our early years program and knowing that the kids love it and everything is sometimes kindergarten, because the kids are growing. One of the things that our leadership team decided this year is to have a full day pre-kinder program. So our pre-kindergartners are not going to have the jump that they used to have, because we had a half day pre-kinder program. So the kids will go from being here until noon to having to stay all the way to 3 o'clock when they were kindergartners. And the parents were already hesitant because kindergarten, it's already elementary school, to now we're going to completely eliminate that transition, because the kids are staying until 3 o'clock. They are eating lunch here. They are having seconds and they are having naps and they are enjoying it so much that I think that next school year we'll only have to help the parents and hold their hands. And we do this, by the way, by having a meeting with kindergarten parents before the school starts to explain everything to them. So we do that as it
Well, it's
is.
interesting that you say holding parents' hands and helping them out, because I had another question come into the chat. So, a parent who has a globally mobile child who's asking that they worry sometimes that that job responsibility that has them moving from location to location, now understanding that what they have is a third culture kid. They're worried, right? Is that lifestyle bad in some way? Will this be something negative for their child? Can you just expand a little bit more, Tanya, on what the benefits are of being that globally mobile child, being that third culture kid? What are the benefits and what are maybe some of the challenges they should look out for?
Yeah. So remember that now when kids apply to universities, when you apply to jobs, even as adults, they ask you how flexible you are, how willing are you to work with different kids. That you get from being in an international school and from being mobile. The kids that are mobile, we have students in elementary school that already speak four languages, that talk about being in Africa and going to a safari, being in the Eiffel Tower, and learning about French Revolution in a French school. So those life experiences make part of your story. And I think that something that we need to realize is that we all are made of our experiences. So at the end, your life story, no matter if you're 5 or you're 55 or whatever age you have, your experiences make up your life story. So research shows that as long as the parents are supportive and they are okay with the transition, the kids are going to be okay with that transition. So as parents, you need to work on yourselves so that you can be there for them.
Taking notes. I'm going to work on myself. Thank you, Tanya. Question we've been wondering, what do we do with students who maybe don't have the language proficiency? So maybe they're moving to a country where they, in our case, maybe they speak no Spanish. Are there things that we're doing at Academia Cotopaxi to support students who maybe don't have our language of instruction yet? And does lack of language become a barrier to adaptation?
You want me to answer that?
Go for it.
So this year again, lots of changes, lots of initiatives, and I think that many of these initiatives, to be just to, not to say all, but many of our initiatives are wonderful, and our language center now is providing extra classes because we do have obviously a wonderful and strong program for language learners. But if the child comes in with zero English, they get to have even more classes, but within the school day. Because what it used to happen before is they will come here from 8 to 3, and then in the afternoons, when they should be playing, when they should be connecting with their friends, when they should be speaking their mother language, because remember, to make sure that the kids integrate well, we do need to value their language, their home language. So we are organizing so that the kids have extra language support within the school time.
You all have been so good at sending me messages in private chat, but if anyone wants to also raise their hand and ask a question, please feel free to do so. If there's any other questions that you want to put into the chat, please feel free to do so. We had a wonderful comment that came into the chat, Tanya, noting that, the grass, we often think the grass is greener on the other side, but this attendee would argue the grass is greener where you water it. And I just think that's such a wonderful reminder, right? And it made me think a lot that, that pertains not only to stayers, right? Because oftentimes I think, and I've seen this at working in international schools, I've seen stayers who, I don't know, maybe jealousy is too strong of a word, but they might feel a bit of desire as well to be globally mobile, and they'll have these peers that are moving from country to country and they think like, oh, I want to go to a different country, right? But it's wonderful to also kind of water the grass where you are and to consider the ways in which the country that you're in is so wonderful. And then that's also something really important for those kiddos who are globally mobile to think about those third culture kids, because there can be those moments of real just frustration or resistance when they initially arrive somewhere, or that those experiences of culture shock, right? Where you think everything that I experienced before, I prefer more than this new thing in front of me. But trying to find the wonderful aspects of the country that you're in and the context that you're in is a real skill that can be developed and that can be nurtured, and a wonderful thing from a dispositional standpoint for students to be able to get to the point and the perspective that they can see the positives in the places that they're in, right? Because in the end, as those of us who have had the opportunity to live in a few different places, even just within our own country, no place is perfect. And everywhere that we go, there will be things that we really, really love. And there will be perhaps aspects of that location that we don't prefer. And so being able to have a bit of more of a balanced perspective on that is a wonderful thing for children to develop, a wonderful thing for adults to develop. Does anyone have any other questions? Anything that you're wondering? Anything that you want to pick Tanya's brain on? We'll definitely have moments that we're available for those questions directly if you have them. Okay, here
I
comes
think that
that.
is super important that you know that we're all here for your kids. We are so thankful that you share them with us, that you trust us with them. And for us too, every day is a transition.
Mm.
Every day we look at your kids with the same wonder, with the same love, and with the same willingness to make sure that that's a wonderful day. Um, and I have to say this, with the early childhood, obviously you get to hug them and you get to do different things when they want you to hug them. But with secondary school, that high five and that hi, how are you? And making sure that we acknowledge them and that we get to say hello to them. Uh, that's part of the transition. That's part of making sure that they know that they are being seen and that they matter. And I think that those of us that are in education and that we love your children and the school, we make sure that your kid knows that they are appreciated and that we value who they are.
So that's connected to a question that just came in, Tanya. People are wondering, do you have any more advice on how to help children who may have friends who are coming and going, or maybe that friend who's coming and going? How can they sustain and maintain those relationships from afar? Do you have any advice on that?
So I know that many parents are friends with the kids' parents, right? So that helps with that connection because I know of families that plan vacations where they meet half point. So they don't have to go all the way to Thailand or they don't have to come all the way to Ecuador, but they might meet in California. They might meet someplace like that. And we do have kids that whose best friend moved away, and the parents make sure that they continue to be friends by allowing them to have Google Meets or to have WhatsApps. The parents WhatsApp, I'm not saying to give phones to the little kids, but they make sure that they continue to be connected. Because at the end, I know of several of our kids that when they graduated, they end up going to the same university of the friends, the best friends that were made in fifth grade because of different places. They were living somewhere in Brazil, somewhere in the States, somewhere in Europe, some stayed here in Ecuador, and they made sure that they apply to the same schools. So
So
you
this
can
is
do
happening with
lots
my
of
son.
different
So
things.
I've seen this. It's true.
You see?
My son's best friend from Bangladesh, they're both applying to the same school in Canada. So yes,
Yeah,
you are correct that that does happen, which is incredible,
it
right?
does. Yeah.
But what I'm hearing you say is that it's really important that as adults in our children's lives and in our students' lives, that we're being intentional about really fostering and encouraging those relationships, reminding, facilitating, really, really supporting and helping to make sure that those relationships sustain. And that's really wonderful advice. I think we can't just sit by and expect our kiddos to do that really, really well on their own, right? So that's a wonderful reminder. Thank you so much for that. All right, so we're heading toward the end of our time, and I do want to respect everyone's time. Want to let you know before we end our call today that we already have our next webinar planned. This is going to be an incredible one, so we encourage you to join us for it on March 24th. We're going to be talking about outdoor experiential education as key to human flourishing, and we're going to be having a couple of really exciting invited guests that are joining us for that. In the email that you will receive after we hang up from the call today, you will get a link to be able to register to that webinar. So if that's a topic that also interests you, we encourage you to join us. As a reminder, you will get an email after we finish the call today for everyone who's attended our webinar. You'll get the PDF presentation that we just shared. So all of those very minute details, you can go and study up on your theoretical frameworks of belonging and connection. You'll get that in an email. And so if you have any questions at all, always reach out to us. We're happy to follow up with anything that you might need. The recording for our webinar this evening will be on our website probably by tomorrow. So you can always check back in there, share with any friends that you have. As we all try and be better at supporting transitions care, we'll support and care for one another. And we thank you so, so much for joining us this evening. Thank you so much. We hope to see you the next time that we connect, and have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.